A carpenter from a nowhere town steps into the muddy water of the Jordan River. The current pulls at his rough tunic. You start to see something the stained glass windows completely miss. This was not a peaceful moment. The name is a prophecy. The word is a warning. We know the story of the reluctant prophet. A man runs from his calling. A violent storm shatters the sea. A sailor is thrown overboard into the churning black waves. A massive creature swallows him whole. He spends 3 days in the suffocating dark, 3 days smelling salt and seaweed and death. 3 days crushed under the unimaginable weight of the ocean floor. And then, he is vomited out onto the hot sand. His name is Jonah. In Hebrew, his name is Yonah. His name literally translates to dove. Years after the baptism, the religious leaders corner Jesus in the temple courts. They demand a trick. They demand a fiery spectacle in the sky. They want undeniable proof of his authority. Jesus refuses the performance. He tells them they will get only one sign. The sign of the prophet Jonah. The sign of the dove. Most modern readers look back at the Jordan River and think the descending bird is just a pleasant inauguration, a polite ribbon-cutting ceremony for his public ministry. But the gospel writers are weaving a much darker, much more profound thread. When the Yonah descends over the water, it is pointing directly to the grave. The dove is not a symbol of a long, peaceful life. It is the promise of a 3-day descent into darkness. Jesus steps into the river, and the symbol of Jonah hovers over his wet hair. The dove is not a symbol of gentle serenity. It is a declaration of a new creation, born out of chaos. The waters of the Jordan are foreshadowing a much deeper, more terrifying submersion to come. He is the true and better dove. He will be thrown into the violent, raging storm of human sin. He will be swallowed by the black belly of the earth. He will spend 3 days wrapped in a linen shroud in the suffocating dark of a stone tomb. And he will come out alive on the other side. Every time a first-century Jew hears the name Jonah, they think of the man who survived the absolute abyss. They think of the man who cheated death. They think of the prophet who went down into the ultimate pit and lived to walk into a violent city and trigger a massive wave of repentance. The bird falling from the violently torn sky is carrying that exact, undeniable resume. It is marking the carpenter for the cross. It is marking him for the tomb. But there is one more crucial detail unfolding at the river that day. A detail we almost always miss because our eyes are entirely focused on the bird, when we should actually be listening to the terrifying noise surrounding it. Listen to the sheer volume of the Jordan Valley in this exact second. The sky does not just tear open in absolute, serene silence. A voice speaks out of the rupture. And to understand what that actually sounds like, you have to realize that the Jewish crowd, to feel the weight of this story, you have to strip away the centuries of quiet, European art. You have to step back into first-century Judea. Standing waist-deep in the cold current, grew up memorizing and singing a very specific lyric about the voice of God suspended over large bodies of water. It is Psalm Kaksikumenta Udeksan. They know the words by heart. The voice of the Lord is over the waters. The God of glory thunders. The voice of the Lord is powerful. The voice of the Lord breaks the cedars. When the heavens violently rip apart, the people gathered on the riverbank do not hear a polite, disembodied greeting. The Pharisees from Jerusalem, the tax collectors from Jericho, the zealots hiding daggers under their heavy woolen cloaks, they all feel a physical, bone-rattling vibration deep in their chests. The wilderness shakes. The voice that once spoke from the terrifying, burning fire of Mount Sinai, the voice that carved stone tablets and terrified an entire generation of Israelites into begging Moses to make the noise stop, is suddenly echoing off the dusty limestone cliffs of the Judean desert. The voice from the clouds is not a gentle, fatherly whisper meant only for a private moment of affirmation. It is the earth-shattering thunder of ancient Israel announcing a new king. Look at the terrifying, beautiful collision happening right there in the mud. You have the ultimate, unveiled expression of divine, untamable power, the sky splitting open. The thundering voice that snaps massive cedar trees in half converging. You have to feel the cold water of the Jordan rising past your knees. Jesus is not simply giving an example for future believers to follow. On the most fragile, overlooked symbols imaginable. A peasant carpenter from a town that scholars joke about. And a hummingbird bought with copper coins. Infinite power and absolute poverty. Terrifying majesty and deep marginalization. Completely collapsing into a single, dripping wet man standing in a dirty river. God does not dial back his devastating glory to meet the earth. He pours the absolute fullness of that glory into the vessel of absolute humility. The thunder calls the carpenter his beloved son. It declares that the Father is well pleased. The 400-year silence is definitively, violently broken. The floodwaters of chaos are receding. The dove of the margins has descended. The prophet, who will willingly step into the suffocating belly of the earth, is officially marked. The crowd stands in stunned, shivering awe, the water still pulling at their garments, trying to process the sheer, terrifying weight of what they have just survived witnessing. But that leaves a massive, unavoidable question for the rest of us. If the torn sky, the thundering voice, and the descending dove mean all of this, what does it actually change for the person who is standing far away from that river today, carrying a weight they cannot seem to put down? But here is the part I keep coming back to. It is not the violent tearing of the sky. He is enacting something ancient. He is pulling a thread that stretches all the way back to the very first page of the Hebrew Scriptures. It is not the voice of thunder shattering the cedars. It is the bird itself, the Yonah, the exact offering a peasant mother bought with a handful of copper coins when she had absolutely nothing else to give. If you are in a season where you feel completely empty-handed, if you are staring at the cold, blue light of a phone screen at 2 in the morning, if you are gripping the rigid plastic of a steering wheel after a brutal failure, feeling the heavy, physical ache of anxiety tightening in your chest, you look at the fragmented pieces of your life, and you feel like you have absolutely no pristine lamb to offer. You assume God is waiting for you to fix it. You expect the sky to stay bolted shut until you can present something unbroken. You think the silence will last until you get your act together. This is not the reality of the kingdom. This is the lie of a transactional religion. Look at the muddy water of the Jordan. Look at what God actually honors. The Spirit of God completely bypasses the gleaming gold of the temple. It ignores the burning incense and the polished marble floors of the religious elite, to a moment when the world was entirely submerged in dark, violent water. The question is, why this specific bird? It descends directly onto the exact symbol of the marginalized, the broken, and the poor. God is not repelled by your lack of resources. He is drawn to it. The heavens do not tear open for the people who have everything figured out. They tear open for the people standing waist-deep in the dirt, waiting for a rescue they cannot afford to buy. You do not have to perform your way out of the floodwaters. You do not have to earn your way out of the chaos. The dove has already descended. The ancient silence is over. The king has already chosen to step into the darkest, most violent currents of the human experience, so that you do not have to drown in yours. He is taking the sign of Jonah. He is preparing to be swallowed by the earth. But when you step back and look at the entire tapestry of this moment, you realize this was never just about a single afternoon in the desert. Jesus walks up out of the muddy current of the Jordan. The violently torn sky begins to heal, and the terrifying thunder fades into the rustle of the dry desert wind. The bird of the poor rests quietly on the wet, shivering shoulders of a carpenter. Why not an eagle? The symbol of Roman imperial power? Why not a lion? The ancient emblem of the tribe of Judah? He turns his face away from the crowds, away from the river, and looks toward the desolate, scorched wasteland of the wilderness. The pieces of this moment are not random. The sky was bolted shut for 4 centuries, and a carpenter tore it violently open. The world drowned in the dark floodwaters of Genesis, and a hummingbird signaled that dry land was finally here. A peasant mother bought the cheapest offering in the temple, and God used it to crown a king. A reluctant prophet was swallowed by the Black Ocean, and his name became the undeniable sign of a resurrected Savior. The thunder of ancient Israel broke the massive cedars, and it spoke gently over a man shivering in a muddy river. The religious elite demanded a pristine, wealthy lamb, and the heavens offered the currency of the forgotten. The barrier between God and humanity seemed completely sealed, and the cosmos was violently ripped in two to let the presence out. One river, one thread, one story. But maybe the part that stays with me most is the timing of the torn sky. God does not wait for Jesus to preach a single sermon, perform a single miracle, or defeat a single temptation in the desert before speaking. Why a dove? Fragile and small. Descending into a crowd of people who have nothing left to lose, the dove descends, and the voice thunders its approval. Before the carpenter has actually done anything at all, the baptism is not a reward for a mission accomplished. It is the unconditional love that makes the mission possible. If you are in a season where you feel like you are constantly trying to earn your place, constantly trying to prove your worth before you are allowed to hear a word of affirmation, the Jordan River changes everything. God does not demand you climb up to a golden temple with a perfect sacrifice to find him. He tears open the universe to stand in the mud with you. He speaks his love over you before the work even begins. And may the God who rips open the heavens to reach the broken walk with you through your own deep waters and bring you out, carrying a peace you could not have earned any other way. If this opens something in you, subscribe. Leave a comment, even one word helps. Share this with someone who feels like the sky has been silent for far too long. Pray for us as we keep digging into these texts. The answer changes how you read every chapter that follows. It changes what you think Jesus is actually doing when he walks out of the river and heads directly into the wasteland. But to understand the bird that descends that day, the riverbanks are packed, choked with dust, and crowds of people who smell of sweat and desperation. You first have to understand the sky it falls from. Because, for 400 years, that sky had been doing something terrifying. For 4 centuries, the heavens over Israel have been bolted shut. Historians call this the intertestamental period, a polite, academic term for what was actually a 400-year famine of hearing the words of the Lord. Since the days of the prophet Malachi, the sky has been terrifyingly quiet. The people have watched empires rise and fall in the silence. They have felt the crush of the Greek war machine, the brief and bloody independence of the Maccabean revolt, and finally, the heavy iron grip of Roman occupation closing around their throats. They have watched Herod the Great build a sprawling, spectacular temple complex, a mountain of gleaming white stone and gold that reflects the desert sun so brightly it physically burns the eyes of anyone looking at it. They have the architecture, they have the burning incense, the thick smell of roasted meat from the morning sacrifices, and the endless scratching of scribes copying ancient leather scrolls. But they do not have a voice. The prophets are dead, their tombs whitewashed and silent. For generations, the faithful have lived under what feels like a ceiling of solid brass. When you read the historical accounts and apocryphal texts from this era, you can feel the desperation bleeding through the ink. The rabbis debated the old texts endlessly. The scholars searched the stars. They have walked for days into the Judean wilderness, lining up to let a wild-haired prophet plunge them under the surface. The zealots sharpened their daggers in the dark alleys of Jerusalem. Everyone was waiting for the sky to open, for God to finally break his silence and step back into the violent story of his people. The silence is not a lack of religion. It is the terrifying absence of a living God. To stand in the muddy water of the Jordan River in the 1st century is to stand under the crushing weight of that 400-year holding of breath. John the Baptist is the first crack in the ice. He is a wild man, pulling crowds into the wilderness, because he is vibrating with a prophetic urgency that the polished temple establishment has long forgotten. But even John is only a herald. He is preparing a runway in the dirt. He knows the real event is not happening on the riverbank, but in the space above it, When Jesus wades into the current, the religious authorities expect a king to emerge with a sword. The crowds expect a military leader to overthrow the Roman garrison. They are looking at the dirt, expecting an earthly solution. But the universe is preparing something far more disruptive. The silence of the centuries is about to be shattered. And the Gospel of Mark uses a very specific, violent word to describe exactly how the sky finally answers. Jesus breaks the surface of the water. The river crashes around his knees. The desert wind hits his wet skin. Drops of water fall from his beard. They are waiting to be washed clean. They are waiting for God to finally say something. And then, it happens. The crowd murmurs in the oppressive heat. And then, the vault of heaven shatters. Look at how the Gospel of Mark describes this exact second. Mark chapter 1, verse 10. The English translations usually soften the blow. They tell us Jesus saw the heavens opening or parting. They make it sound like theater curtains drawing back. But the Greek verb Mark uses is schizo. It is the root where we get modern words like schizophrenia, a splitting or tearing of the mind. In the ancient Greek world, schizo means to cleave, to rip, to split apart with sheer, unstoppable force. It is the exact word you use when you grab a piece of thick, heavy garment in both hands and violently rip it in half. The event above the river is not a polite parting of the clouds. It is a violent tearing of the cosmos. God is not cracking a window. He is ripping the roof off the universe to get to the dirt. Mark is a writer of brilliant, deliberate precision. He only uses the word schizo 2 times in his entire account of Jesus' life. 2 tears. 2 ripping moments that frame the entire story. The first time is here, at the beginning, in the muddy water of the Jordan. Most people assume they know exactly how this scene plays out. It is one of the most famous images in human history. The sky is torn apart. The second time is at the very end. Jesus hangs on a rough wooden execution stake. He breathes his last breath. His lungs stop. His chest stills. And miles away in Jerusalem, inside the glittering temple complex, the massive, woven curtain, the veil separating the untouchable Holy of Holies from the rest of the broken world, is suddenly torn in 2 from top to bottom. The word is schizo. The sky rips open at his baptism. The veil rips open at his death. The barrier is destroyed. The separation is over. The untouchable presence of God breaks loose and spills out into the dust and the blood of human history. And, coming straight through that first violent tear in the sky, right out of the ripped fabric of the heavens, something descends. It falls through the gap. It moves toward the water. But to understand the shape it takes, to know what this bird actually means, you have to look past the Jordan River. You have to look past the 400 years of silence. You have to look all the way back to the oldest, darkest flood in the world. To understand what the crowd at the Jordan River would have understood, you have to realize that they were a people whose entire imagination was built on the Hebrew scriptures. Every symbol meant something. Every detail was an echo. He steps out of the water. A voice speaks, and a bird flutters down from the clouds. Genesis chapter 8, verses 8 through 12. The earth is a graveyard covered in deep, terrifying water. Noah stands at the window of a wooden ark that smells of pitch and damp animal fur, looking out at a drowned world. He is waiting for the judgment to end, waiting for a sign of solid ground. And he reaches his hand out of the window to release a bird into the empty sky. The word the English text translates as dove here is the Hebrew Yonah. It appears 32 times in the Old Testament, and its linguistic footprint is fascinating. Its root is complex, tied linguistically to a concept of mourning, to a low, murmuring sound, the cooing of a bird that sounds strangely like human grief, but practically in the ancient Near Eastern world. The Yonah was known for one remarkable capability. It was a homing bird. It always finds its way back to dry land, or back to the exact hand of the one who sent it. It is the exact same word used as a name for the most reluctant prophet in the Old Testament. The prophet Jonah. Yonah. He was the man sent over the chaotic, violent waters of the Mediterranean to bring a message of salvation to the brutal city of Nineveh. The man who spent 3 days in the dark before being spit out onto dry land. That Hebrew root changes everything about the baptism scene. You have probably seen it painted on 100 church windows, printed in children's Bibles, or shaped into silver necklaces. When the sky tears open over Jesus and the Spirit descends like a Yonah. A first-century Jewish mind does not see a cute, peaceful garden bird. They see the Genesis story replaying in real time. They see the waters of chaos, the grief of a ruined world, and the precise moment God decides to end the destruction. The dove is not a symbol of gentle serenity. It is the announcement that the floodwaters of chaos are finally receding. If realizing that these ancient texts are connected by threads you never noticed is stirring up questions you've never considered, you're exactly who this channel is for. Drop a thought in the comments and hit subscribe, because every week we go deeper into the text than you knew was possible. So the Gospel writers deliberately connect the muddy waters of the Jordan to the apocalyptic waters of Genesis. The bird hovering over the carpenter from Nazareth is signaling that the long, dark judgment is over. A new creation is breaking through the surface. But the Yonah carried a second meaning in the Jewish mind, one rooted not in the epic scale of a global flood, but in the intimate poverty of the temple courtyard. Step onto the cold, polished stone of the temple courtyard in Jerusalem. It is 30 years before the tearing of the sky at the Jordan. A pristine, glowing dove, landing softly on Jesus' shoulder. A universal symbol of peace, serenity, and quiet approval. A cosmic pat on the back. The air is thick with the smell of roasting meat and burning frankincense. The courtyard rings with the bleating of pristine, unblemished lambs, the heavy clink of silver shekels on the money changers' tables, the low hum of thousands of pilgrims pressing toward the holy place. A young mother walks into this overwhelming sensory storm. She is a peasant from the northern hill country. Her sandals are worn from the dirt of the road. Her husband's hands are deeply calloused from working wood and stone. She is carrying a newborn boy wrapped in common, rough cloth. According to the ancient law of Leviticus chapter 12, a mother must bring a 1-year-old lamb for a purification offering after childbirth. The lamb is the standard. The lamb is what the wealthy bring. The lamb is what the religious elite expect to see bleeding on the altar. But the scroll of Leviticus holds a quiet provision for the margins. If a woman cannot afford a lamb, if her pockets are empty and her hands are rough, the law allows a merciful substitution. She can bring 2 turtle doves. Mary stands in the long shadow of Herod's gleaming golden temple and hands over a few copper coins. She buys the birds of the poor. 30 years later, that saint boy stands submerged in the muddy current of a wilderness river. The heavens rip violently open, but if you look closer at the specific Greek verbs the Gospel writers use, at the ancient Jewish memory of this exact bird, at the water itself, the Spirit of God does not descend as an eagle, the predatory emblem of the Roman Empire. The Spirit does not descend as a lion, the ancient royal seal of the tribe of Judah. The Spirit does not descend as a pristine lamb, the economic engine of the temple priesthood. It descends as the exact bird his mother could barely afford to buy. The dove is not merely a messenger of receding floodwaters. It is the currency of the marginalized. God is tearing open the sky to mark his son, and he completely bypasses every symbol of power, every symbol of wealth, every symbol of institutional religion. He chooses the symbol of the absolute bottom of the socio-economic ladder, the offering of the empty-handed, the sacrifice of the peasant, the bird of the forgotten. It is a staggering identification. The sky is shouting that this king will not reign from a distant marble palace. He will not ride at the head of a Roman legion. He will not demand gold from the starving. He will bleed with the peasants. He will walk with the outcasts. He will carry the weight of the people who only have copper coins to their name. But there is a third shadow cast by the wings of this bird, and it points to a storm far darker than the poverty of Nazareth.